Hey everyone, Brenda Earl Stokes, the owner and creator of Piano and Voice with Brenda, and I'm back again for another Motivation Monday. On Monday, I like to talk casually about just some topics, some things that I've been thinking about in my general life as a musician, as a music teacher, and sometimes as a parent or just as a human in the world. So hopefully you'll find something here that's helpful. One thing I've been thinking about a lot is the idea of going back to basics. And this has come up with so many of my students over the years. And I'll have to say, sometimes I think the recipe for why so many of my students have been so successful, even though they come from a very broad background. I know some teachers that really focus on advanced students, but I tend to have a lot of everybody. Some advanced people, some beginner people, some people that are coming in because they have huge holes in their playing or their singing that they need help with. And I think one of the reasons I've had so much success with so many of my students, especially the ones who are tricky cases for whatever reason, is that I'm not afraid to go back to basics. And when we think about what the basics of music are, it's, your just general sight reading, it's your rhythm sense, it's your sense of pitch. For jazz players, it's going back to just the fundamentals of theory to make sure, like, before you're playing all these complex piano voicings, can you just play a blues? Or how good are your chords or your triad skills? Or how well do you need the modes? And a lot of times I think there's a pressure on teachers and on musicians to be constantly working on a more challenging thing. And I, from a very early way, in my teaching life, I realized for a lot of people, it was, instead of going forward, it was really taking a lot of steps back. Years ago, there was this jazz piano player at the Summer Music Festival that I taught at, and he was like really the deal, and he would sit down at the piano all the time and show off and play all this stuff. And I got kind of the vibe that, because I was there as the jazz piano instructor, like, why would this person study with me? What could I have to offer this person who was so flashy and was doing all this stuff? And what I did at the lesson, when he finally took a lesson with me, was I sat down to see if he could just play a blues at this tempo. And, I know you know where the story is going. No, he could not. He could not do that. And there were a lot of very shaky things that were going on in his playing that actually benefited a lot from going back to basics and just going to simpler stuff and really achieving mastery with it. I have noticed this lately with my son. My son's been he's 9, he's been taking piano lessons with me since he was about 4.5. And last year we really worked far. We got into, what was it, book 4 in this one particular series. And as I was planning what we were going to do for this fall, what I really wanted to do was actually, instead of moving forward in these more advanced books, was to really move backwards, so that we could solidify the building blocks of everything that he was doing. Because I could see that there were some deficiencies in some of his, in the way that he was sight reading, that certain things were challenging, that independence in his practicing wasn't there, that his time sense was okay, but it could have really gone deeper. And so what did I do? I went back to level 1B. Now, luckily, my kid is like okay with this. It sometimes can be a hard sale to get somebody to go back to basics. But once they kind of trust the process a little bit and they can see that this foundation work, like, they're good to go. I think for my kid, he was like, oh, this is easier. But what we were able to do by going back to basics was really solidify his independence in learning. He used to need a lot of support when he was learning music. With this stuff, I could give it to him and say to him, break down the right hand, break down the left hand, do the first 8 bars. I'm going to be back in 10 minutes to see how you're doing. And what was really amazing is something that would have resulted in a lot of errors, because we kicked it back so far. We were able to really work through some of the finer points of his playing, and working with the metronome, all those kinds of things. And so we took quite a few steps back. But I think, again, my instinct is telling me this is going to be time really well spent. We also started from scratch again in a music theory book to make sure that he had really mastered his pitch recognition, that it was happening really quickly. And I'll say the pitch recognition is a thing that comes up a lot. And I've had lots of people who have plenty of piano experience who come to me and they're struggling with something. They can't figure out why they've plateaued or why they're not quite getting to where they want to go. And for a lot of people, it's just a matter of not having a really strong and secure concept of sight reading. And so either they're trying to name every single note and they're not considering the intervals, or they're only considering the intervals and they're not able to name the notes quickly enough. So all of these kinds of things are super foundational. I mean, you think, oh, isn't that stuff you're supposed to learn when you're in a kid, like taking piano lessons? It's like, actually, you'd be astonished at how many people don't have these basics, these foundations down. Now, my new online course as part of the Versatile Musician membership platform, which I'll post a link to below, that's what a lot of the Versatile Musician is about. I cannot tell you how many people, so the new course is called Rhythm Workout, and I cannot tell you how many really high-level musicians have come in here struggling with something, and what it is they don't have a fundamental concept of rhythm. That's it. They just haven't ever really, really worked through their rhythm with a fine-tooth comb. And so that's what Rhythm Workout is for. It's really clapping and counting your way through all the rhythms to make sure that's there. And I know especially for singers, for music theater singers, for example, a lot of times that wasn't covered. And if that's not covered, then you are going to have rhythm issues later when you're doing like something contemporary or something with a driving tempo. There's going to be that thing missing. And what it is again, it's a basic, it's a foundation. It's just the concept of rhythm. This was also why I created the course, Crash Course in Solfege, which is also part of the membership. I did that for the same reason that people come to me who are a singer-songwriter, for example, who was such a talented person and was writing these beautiful songs, but didn't have a strong foundational sense of pitch. And so what do? Like, how do you fix that? Solfege is a direct building block, foundational skill that really solves a lot of those issues. And so that's what I mean by back to basics. I know in my own life, this is something that I go back to all the time, that when I'm in a position where I'm getting back into practicing again, that's when the Bach preludes and fugues that I've played a million times, that's when those come out and I start to really break them down. That's when you'll find me playing my scales and my arpeggios again, hands together, working them slowly to get my technique together. That's when you'll get me back to practicing the same 3 and 4 note shell voicings that I'm teaching all my high school students and college students all the time. I'm practicing that stuff too, because these are the foundational things that if they're somehow not in place, either because you have never gotten them together, like you never spent the time to, or never knew to spend the time to work on that, or if it's been a while since you went back to those concepts and were able to refresh them. So this is what my motivation is for this week, is to stop and think, are there some basics that you're missing? What would back to basics look like for you? I mean, again, another example for singers who are coming in, who are, again, great singers, experienced singers, and they're coming in because they're just not feeling great about their singing. And a lot of times it's going back to something as simple as just register imbalance. How's their head register? How's their chest register? Is there enough strength in the middle? It's building block foundational stuff. So think about your own work this week and think about your own musical work. What are you practicing? What are you working on? And look around, think about what it would mean for you to go back to basics. What would the basics be that you need to work on? If there's something in your musical life that makes you feel kind of icky or you dread doing, that's usually a good place to start. So anyways, I know my son has been having a great time going back to those basics, and I am noticing an incredible amount of improvement. We've been doing this for 2 weeks, and I have seen a marked improvement in his abilities, but also in his confidence, because again, when these basics aren't in place, when the foundation isn't strong, everything feels a little bit off. So I hope this was helpful for you today. Leave a comment below if you have some basics that you're thinking about or if this resonates for you. And thanks so much for watching. Have a great week, everybody. Let's get some practicing done.